Good morning, everybody, and it's great to see a good turnout today. I think it probably has more to do with free food than me, but I'm glad to be here with you, and it's great to get a chance to chat with you a little bit. I thought I'd tell you just a little bit about who I am, why I'm running for Congress, tell you where the 15th district is, I guess, to open up a little bit about who I am, why I'm running for Congress, and then where I think we need to take the country. But if you live in Franklin County, anywhere west of 71, or if you live in Union County or Madison County, then you're in the 15th district. So it includes all the suburbs around 270, Upper Arlington, Hilliard, Grove City. It does not actually include Dublin, but it includes parts of Dublin. It includes Worthington. It includes the Ohio State University. It includes downtown, including Capitol. It does not include your main campus. And includes a lot of the city of Columbus, both south and west sides, as well as all of Union and Madison counties. So, does anybody live in that district? Oh, good. Well, and hopefully you're registered to vote, because the registration deadline ended about 2 weeks ago. So, if you're not registered to vote, it's too late. But if you are registered to vote, I hope you'll come out and vote, and I hope you'll vote for me. You heard, like Phil said, I grew up in a little town in southern Ohio, a little town called Ripley, Ohio, right on the river. A town of about 2,000 people. It was a great town to grow up in because you could pretty much do anything you wanted to do. So I was an Eagle Scout. I was on the basketball team. I was on the baseball team. I ran track. I worked on the student newspaper. I was on student council. I was in the band for a little while, and in my spare time, I was a paper boy. So the great thing about a small town is you can do lots of things, and you can get real involved in stuff. In 1983, I graduated from high school and went to Ohio State, and spent 6 great years at Ohio State. Kept adding majors. It never really took any away. So while I was in college, I made 2 decisions that kind of affected the rest of my life. I decided to enlist in the Army National Guard. 25 years later, I'm still in the Guard. I served a deployment in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2004 and 2005 for 11 months, 23 days, 12 hours, and about 18 minutes. So the thing I'm proud about is I brought all my folks home. I was a battalion commander, had 400 people that worked for me, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and contractors, and I was able to bring everybody home. And I'm proud of that fact. We accomplished our mission, we did a good job. Our responsibility was to deliver the mail in southern Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and Djibouti. It's an important mission that keeps up all the soldiers' morale, and it was amazing how much e-commerce happened, and we saw more drugstore.com and Amazon.com boxes than you could shake a stick at. So it was a fulfilling mission, because usually when people saw us, they were happy because they were getting something from home, or getting a letter from their girlfriend or their family. That was very lucky. I made that original decision to enlist while I was in college, because I was working my way through college and wanted to help pay for school. The other thing I did to pay for school was I was paid that. And that was a great experience and helped me understand what government can do to really bring people together and help solve people's problems when you're addressing the issues that people care about. So I always knew someday I'd want to be in the legislative process. 19 years after the first day I started as a page, I was sworn in as a state senator in 2003, and I served as a state senator for 6 years. In the state senate, I tried to focus on issues of jobs and economic development, and also tried to deal with issues that people care about and that make a difference for people. I sponsored about 30-some bills, passed I think 18 bills. Most of the bills that I sponsored were very bipartisan in nature. I worked with Governor Strickland on Medicaid buy-in, and a good friend of mine who graduated from Capital Law School last year is Melissa Day. I got to know Melissa Day when she became Miss Wheelchair Ohio, and she came into the State House. She was from my district in Hilliard, and we recognized her as being Miss Wheelchair Ohio. And while she was there, we were talking, and she talked about how, I said, well, would you have any interest in coming, because she was still an undergrad at that point, would you have any interest in coming to work in my office and being a page? And she said, well, I can. because the Medicaid rules won't let me. So that's how I learned about how we needed to do reform for Medicaid buy-in. And I helped work with Governor Strickland and got that done. And it's going to put 17,000 Ohioans with disabilities back to work to get a job. As they earn more money, they pay more money, but they get to keep their Medicaid. And so the eligibility rules that forced them to the poverty line were changed so that now they can actually go back to work, and it's going to unleash their creative potential, put them to work, make them more productive. And the interesting other outside output of it is they actually use less medical services because, the brain's a pretty amazing part of our body, and it really can help keep us healthy. And as we're doing other things, the endorphins that are released and other things that happen really help keep our body much more healthy. And the health outcomes are better for people that are working than people that are not working, that have disabilities. So Medicaid buy-in is something I'm real proud of. Worked with Joyce Beatty, who was a Democrat from Columbus, in the House of Representatives to get people with cancer access to life-saving clinical trials. I worked with Rick Pfeiffer to help get vacant and abandoned housing. He's the Democrat city attorney, to help get vacant and abandoned housing back in productive use much faster. And all those kind of things are the things we need to be paying attention to, listening to our communities and working hard. That's the kind of stuff I want to take to Washington. You might ask, why am I running for Congress? Well, I really believe that congressional spending and federal government spending are out of control. And you're the ones who are going to be left holding the bag. All of you, and my daughter Sarah, who's only a year old in the last year, have taken your share of the national debt from $35,000 to over $43,000. It's almost $44,000 each of your share of the national debt. The national debt in just 2 years has gone up $4 trillion. But let's put that in perspective. I think we all recognize that George Bush was a big spender and spent too much money. In 8 years of his administration, the national debt increased $4 trillion. In 2 years of this Congress with Mary Jo Kilroy and Nancy Pelosi and others, the debt increased $4 trillion. So they've done in just 2 years what it took George Bush 8 years to do, and George Bush both parties have been part of this problem. I think we need to fix it. So what I think we need to do is create a 2-year budget, so we've got time to go through every line item, and then we need to give the president a line item veto, so he has the ability to cut out things like earmarks that are going to the wrong place, or just wasteful spending. This president may line item veto some things that I don't want him to line item veto, but I think it's important that we put a process in place. The other two things that I think on budgeting we need are performance-based budgeting, so that if a program's working, it gets more money. If it's not working, it gets less money. And then zero-based budgeting, so programs don't automatically grow every year. That they start with a 0% increase, and then, again, we evaluate if they're working or not working. Nothing automatically grows. This Congress, for the first time since 1974, didn't even pass a budget. So there's no budget at all this year. We are now almost a month into 19 days into the new fiscal year, and there's no budget. So they kicked the can down the road and continued spending at last year's level. Last year's level was basically a $1.4 trillion deficit for the year, just in the budget, before you accounted for the health care bill that added more to the deficit, and the stimulus bill that added more to the deficit, and a few other spending bills that added more to the deficit. So by not passing a budget, they didn't even do the hard work to pick winners and losers of firms that are working, give them more money, firms that aren't working, cut them back. So it's really important that we make those budgetary changes, I believe, because you're the ones who are going to be left holding the bag. And this Congress, in the first 500 days, spent $7 million a minute, and they borrowed 41 cents on every dollar. So during this hour-long meeting, this Congress, if they keep spending at the same level, will spend another $420 million during this hour, and they'll borrow another $172 million. Just put that in perspective, and that's 24 hours a day. It's not just during the day. If you wanted to just make it an 8-hour business day that they're spending money, it would be 8 times that much. So, three times that much. So that's what's going on in Washington with spending. The other thing that I think needs to happen is jobs. And if you look at the 20 to 24-year-olds, their unemployment rate is 15%. I think some of you probably saved yourself from a tough economy by going to law school, but hopefully by the time you get out of law school, there'll be jobs. I was just talking to some of your second and third year folks, and I know that the legal market's tight out there right now too. Are any of you interviewing yet? Some of you? It's tight out there, right?
Yeah.
It's tough. And I believe that the government is not going to create the jobs in the future. I believe that private business is going to create the jobs in the future. And so I take that philosophy, and what I think we need to do is give businesses more certainty. We need to give them more certainty on taxes, so I'm for extending the tax cuts. Now my opponent says we can't do the tax cuts and take seriously the budget deficit. Well, I think we can, because I think we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. During the time that Bush was in office from 01 to 08, even after the tax cuts, tax revenues outpaced inflation. So we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem in Washington, and we've got to get spending under control. We've got to give businesses more certainty on all those taxes, because small business especially, a lot of those individuals, and if you go out and start your law firms yourselves, and that's the other thing that a lot of people are doing, because the job market's so tight, you're starting your own small businesses, you'll run your business income through your personal return in most cases. You'll probably create an LLC or an S corporation, and you'll run all that personal income through your business income through your personal return. Well, I just believe you can't punish success and expect more of it. So increasing taxes on people who are a little more successful is a terrible idea. And what we need is to get more people to work. 1 out of every 11 people in this district does not have a job. And it's worse nationwide. So we need to deal with unemployment by getting small business engaged in this fight to create jobs. In fact, business today is sitting on more retained earnings, more cash than they have any time in the last 50 years. And why aren't they spending that cash to create jobs? Because of the uncertainty out there. The uncertainty of final demand, but also the uncertainty of taxes, the uncertainty of regulation, things like cap and trade. The cap and trade bill will increase the average home's utility bills by $100 a month. And on businesses, especially manufacturing businesses, that impact is disproportionately worse. In fact, cap and trade, while it sounds good in concept, unless you have an international agreement on a cap and trade concept, all it does is move the pollution around the world. And it's called global warming, it's not called American warming. So we've got to actually figure out how to deal with it everywhere. You can't just move the jobs to India, China, Mexico, and Brazil and move the pollution there, because at some point it gets up in the higher atmospheres and the wind blows it right back over here. So we've got to figure out, and that's why I prefer an adaptation strategy to a mitigation strategy on global warming. I don't know if any of you saw what happened in Copenhagen in the summer, but basically everybody sitting around the table but the United States was there with their hand out. And until the United States on the last day came up with $400 billion to help out, it was going nowhere. And so that's what we need to do, I think, is focus on mitigation, on adaptation as opposed to mitigation, because it's something we can do and pay as we go, as opposed to making a big upfront investment and finding out in 10 or 15 years that it didn't work. And unless you have international agreements, none of that stuff's going to work anyway. So we also have to give people more certainty on regulation. In Ohio, they have a system called agency rule review, where any federal agents or any state agencies that make rules, every so often they sunset, and then the legislature has to reauthorize them. In Congress and in the federal government, they don't have any such thing, and a lot of regulations just stay on the books, and so the regulations pile up and up and up and up, and that increases burdens, especially on small business. And right now, where we are in this economic cycle, we can't afford that. We need to make sure every regulation that is there makes sense, and it's actually protecting somebody from something. It's not just some antiquated language that nobody bothered to get rid of. So I believe we need to sunset regulations every few years, and then have a discussion about whether they're working, what their purpose is, and whether we need them or not. Those are the kind of things I think we need to do to get focused on jobs and get the private sector engaged in the fight to create jobs. And that's what I think we need to cut spending. And those two issues are what this campaign is about for me. It's about cutting spending and focusing on jobs.